Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ohio Huntsman podcast with your hosts Jason, Jacob, and Jeff. And I'm really excited about this episode because we talked to Josh Grossenbacher. If you're not familiar with Josh, he's a turkey hunting, turkey calling master. He was the 2015 World Turkey Calling Champion. He was the 2017 Grand National Head-to-Head Champion. And he's got multiple state turkey calling championships. So needless to say, Josh talks turkey. And he also works for Zink Calls and Avian-X Decoys. If you're not familiar with those companies, they're both Ohio companies. They make turkey, goose, duck calls, and decoys. So check them out. Before we get into the episode with Josh, I want to talk about our sponsor. The sponsor of this show is Monster Whitetail Grub. Monster Whitetail Grub is an Ohio-based deer feed company. They make a high-quality deer feed. It's a high-protein feed. And it just brings the deer in. It really works. It's got mineral built into it, and it's a good company. They source all their product from Ohio, so you're helping the Ohio economy. So check out Monster Whitetail Grub. In this episode with Josh, we talk about, basically we go over a day in the turkey woods. What do you look for? How do you locate birds? What do you do for a calling sequence? Josh gives us, he demos some of the different calls that he uses. We just cover a ton of information in this one. So if you're into turkeys, interested in turkey hunting at all, this one's definitely worth a listen. So with that, let's get into the call with Josh. All right, we've got Josh Grossenbacher on the line, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation because Josh is quite the turkey man. My understanding, Josh, and sort of correct me where I'm wrong, but you've got a handful of turkey calling awards. You've won some competitions, and you just enjoy hunting turkeys, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've this will be my 25th season of spring gobbler hunting. A few of the titles I hold. A handful of Ohio State calling titles, Ohio State Open Division titles, Ohio State Friction titles. I was the 2015 World Open Champion, 2017 Grand National Head-to-Head Champion, and these last 2 years I've been first runner-up in the senior division at the Grand Nationals. So been competitive calling since 2002, and I really enjoy it. It's it kind of fills the void in between turkey seasons, and it's something that always seemed to always keep growing and getting better as a caller, which in turn I believe helps in the turkey woods.
Yeah.
And that's what really got me into competitive calling a long time ago.
So I've got so many questions. So I guess to start, before I just start bombarding you with questions, tell us a little bit about the turkey calling competitions, right? So, you mentioned open calling and Grand National head-to-head. Can you kind of walk us through what those different competitions are or what they're like?
Okay, well, like an open division, you've usually got 5 to 7 judges, and each caller they'll have like a list of calls, which could be 4 to 5 different calls. Let's say like cutting of a hen, fly down cackle, plain yelp, assembly yelp, the kiki run, cluck and purr, all sorts of different calls. And I'll run through them here in a little bit for you, but you'll be on stage. Each caller draws a number, so you get your calling position, and the MC, whoever's MCing, will call out what call, say caller number 3, the plain yelp of the hen, and usually got about a minute. It's usually about what it takes for a caller to get through that call. And the judges will score that on a 1 to 20 basis, 20 being the highest. And then the MC will ask for cutting of the hen, and you'll go through that, and the judges will score that. And after 4 or 5 calls, they'll have their scores calculated, and they'll take, out of those 7 judges, they'll take the high score and the low score and throw that out and add them all up at the end and see who wins.
And so they're judging based on I guess what their interpretation of how realistic the calls sound, or what are the judging criterias?
They're basing it on how real you sound compared to a hen turkey, where it's cadence and rhythm and overall sound, just realism. And I tell you what, it's pretty neat how good the guys are getting and have gotten.
Yeah.
And just seems to keep evolving.
Well, that's something that I've never participated in or anything, and so I was glad to hear that, or I guess I'm glad to have you kind of explain that to us and kind of sort of open our eyes to that a little bit, because that's definitely interesting, and like you said, it being a good competition caller, like you said, I'm sure helps being a good. How could it not, right? I mean, the goal of the competition is to sound more like a real turkey, so how could it not help in the turkey woods?
Oh yeah, and one of the things that really stands out to me, like when you get on that stage, your adrenaline's pumping, you're a ball of nerves. Usually there's a pretty decent crowd of people watching, and to be able to make those sounds and be precise in that heat of the moment, I think it's about as nerve-wracking as when you're working that turkey and he's within 50 yards and you're trying to do the soft stuff.
Right.
When your adrenaline's pumping so hard that you can't even get a sound out of your mouth. It's in my eyes, it's pretty comparable. The experience or the feelings that you're getting at that moment in time on stage. It's pretty cool.
Right.
It can drive you crazy though.
All right. So
I got a quick question just for completeness sake, I guess. This is diaphragm calling, I assume?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
That's all right.
The open division it's mostly diaphragm calls, mouth calls, but there are some guys that will use friction calls for some of the calls here and there. And if a friction caller wants to call in the open, they are allowed to, but there are friction only divisions. And, so there's that as well. And there also are gobbling divisions where it's just strictly gobbling, owl hooting, where that's judged completely different. So there's different types of contests.
Okay. And are there any, because I've heard guys do just voice calling. Are there any voice calling competitions?
There used to be a lot of natural voice contests, and to be honest with you, since I started in 2002, I can't really say that I've ever attended one or seen one in person. So I think it's kind of a thing of the past.
Okay. All right. So then I guess let's transition into turkey hunting then. And so, as we've mentioned before, we're all kind of beginner/novice turkey hunters. You are the maestro.
No, I've been doing it a while, but I'm still learning.
Well, compared to us, let's say you're the maestro. So we are here to learn from you, and hopefully the listeners will. I'm sure there'll be things for them to learn here. So, I guess to start, right, we're going to start our day in the turkey woods. Do you take time to try and locate birds the night before, or are you going out, or does it depend on the kind of time you have available, or how do you handle that?
Yeah, depending on time available. If I've got time to scout the night before, most definitely. Not to get too far off base, but I mean, some states in Ohio too, the later in the season, the last 2 weeks of season when you can hunt all day, that's a great time to get birds located for the next morning. But, our first 2 weeks of season here in Ohio, I'll spend time in the evenings if I don't have obligations with work or my family, trying to locate a gobbler for the next morning. I mean, you can never beat having a game plan, and it seems to me more times than not when I get one roosted, it doesn't seem to work out how you plan. But it's always nice to get out of the truck and know where you're starting instead of going in blind.
Right. Okay, so let's say you know where a bird's at when you go out in the morning. Mm-hmm. What is your game plan? Are you trying to get as close as possible without kind of letting the bird know that you're there and setting up and waiting for daylight to break, waiting for fly down, or what's your tactic there if you know where a bird's at in the morning?
If I know where he's at, I'm going to get as close as possible to him, and without really trying to press the issue. But I'm going to sit down and I'm going to wait for him to make that first gobble and kind of see, maybe give it a few minutes of him gobbling, see if there's any hens in the area yelping. I've heard a lot of guys talk in the past about, they don't like to call to turkeys on the limb, but it's something that I've done for as long as I can remember, and that's just hitting him with some soft yelps. I want to be the first thing in his ear when he wakes up. I want him to know that I'm there, but I'm not going to call to him aggressive. It's going to be soft, just clucks and soft yelps. And usually, I've had a lot of success just soft calling to him on the limb to where they will just fly right down and come directly my way.
Okay. So you said, you mentioned earlier going through the calls.
Yes.
Do you have it? Could you kind of give us an example of those clucks and soft yelps that you would do first thing?
Yeah, like what I'll do right now is just basically, if that bird's on the limb and he's gobbling, hold on, let me get a drink of water here.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just going to start off. Basically just saying good morning, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And then you can kind of take their temperature. If he's responding to it, I might get a little bit more aggressive with it. Just really trying to get his attention and let him know that I'm there. And if he starts gobbling to it, I might just shut up for a little while. It all depends on how he's acting.
Okay. Man, I gotta tell you, hearing that is it's like, that is music to my ears, man. That gets me so fired up to get in the turkey woods. So
yeah.
Well, good.
And
so when you're calling to him on the limb, are you within eyesight of him at this point? You could
sometimes, and it's a lot of it. Depending on the time of the season too. As you guys know, you've been out in the woods in the spring in Ohio. Like when season opens in, late April, there, like last year, there wasn't much foliage for like the first 2 weeks of season. Yeah. And once it cracks daylight, you have a hard time moving. So I don't want to get super close when it's like that. It's easier when it gets later in the season and there's a lot more leaves and a lot more cover to move around. But a lot of times I'll try to get to where I can see them, but when there's no foliage, it's tricky. It's risky.
Okay. All right, so I guess let's continue down this hypothetical turkey hunt. So you've done the soft yelps. He is interested, responding a little bit, and you hear him fly down, I guess.
Uh-huh.
So he's on the ground now. Now, how does your tactics change?
Well, once he flies down, if I see him or if I can hear in the change of his gobble that he's not, if I don't see him and I can hear that his gobble sounds like, he's on the ground, then I'll let out a cackle, letting him know that I am on the ground. And I'll basically just go from tree yelping right into a cackle, which is what it sounds like. Basically just letting him know that I'm on the ground. And from there, if he gobbles at that or if he doesn't, I am going to give him a little bit of time and see what he's doing. And then I'll check him with, a little bit more of an aggressive yelp. and see see how he responds to that.
Okay, so a couple questions that come out of that. Do you always wait for him to like to where you are pretty sure he's on the ground before you do your fly down cackle sequence, or would you ever do that while he's still on the limb?
Yeah, I have. I guess I'm. Yeah, I've done both. I guess I'm trying to explain it probably the most conservative way that I would do it.
Sure. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And so, and you're doing all this calling is with a diaphragm call, right?
Yeah, but I'll also do it on a pot style call, Slater glass.
Okay. All right. So everybody's on the ground now. You're on the ground. Tom's on the ground. I mean, you've been on the ground the whole time, but now he thinks you're on the ground.
Right.
And let's say, I guess what happens next? Ideally he's coming your way, right? I mean, he's gobbling and the gobbles are coming towards you, right?
Hopefully,
in an ideal situation.
In a perfect scenario, yeah, he's working his way, and basically what I'm going to do is just start off nice and easy, and just if he's gobbling to it, good, and if I can tell he's covering ground, I'm going to just keep calling to him soft, and every so often, I mean, if he's covering the ground, I'm just going to let him work.
Okay.
But there are some instances where there's some of them that just they can't seem to get there fast enough, and the more that you call and the louder you call, the faster they come and the harder they gobble, and that's all situational. But I usually just try to be easy and let them do their thing, especially like I said in the early season when the woods are wide open.
Okay.
And are you using decoys or?
Most of the time, yeah, I do. Especially that part of the season. I mean, it's, they can get 50 yards away from you and they don't see anything in the woods. I mean, especially as flat as it is around this part of the state,
Right.
There's not a lot of terrain to, break things up or get in between you.
Okay, so two things. I want to get into scenario. We sort of just went through the ideal scenario. You knew where the birds were in the evening, calling to them. They come down. They come to you. So I want to get into some of the other situations. But one thing that I forgot to mention, and Jacob, you asking about decoys reminded me. Josh, you actually are part of the pro staff or something for Avian-X. Is that correct?
No, I'm a full-time employee with Avian-X.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yep.
All right. So I'm assuming you're then using Avian-X Decoys?
Yes, sir. Yep.
And one other thing that I didn't realize is Avian-X is an Ohio company, right?
Yeah, Avian-X. I've been employed with Zink Calls up in Port Clinton since February 1st of 2008, full-time. And along with the calls, we started, Fred and Don Zink started Avian-X Decoys. Oh, geez, I think it was 2011 or 12, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And it's been a really great product for us. Just a little backstory. When we started off filming, selling calls, we were using a lot of different decoys on the market, trying to video hunts and get really good footage. And we were using everything. And Fred come up with some ideas on some decoys, and we made some prototypes and started filming over them, and had so much success that it led into a whole new deal for us. So they've been great. They're a very effective decoy.
Yeah, I've got to say those are some of the best looking decoys that I think I've seen, man. Those Avian-X decoys are just masterful, really. I mean, they're good looking decoys. So, all right. So, Zink, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are you then also, for your calls, you're using Zink Calls?
Yes. Yep.
And
I build all the mouth calls for Zink Calls.
Okay. So why wouldn't you use your own stuff, right? It's the best.
Right.
And you've actually got your own signature call, right?
Yep.
Now, is that a call that anybody can run, or is that more for your advanced, more frequent flyers, or?
It's a lighter stretched call with 2 light reads on the bottom and a heavier read on the top, and I feel as far as for a beginner to a more experienced caller, I think it covers the bases for everybody. I mean, it's a call that's easy to produce sounds on.
Okay.
And I know as a beginner turkey mouth caller, the hardest part is trying to make sounds. I mean, we've all sounded like a kazoo, and it's
Right.
So it's very frustrating. But I think the combination of reads on it and everything make it a little bit more user friendly.
Okay.
But it's a style of call that I've always been comfortable with for a long time.
Okay. Well, and I want to get back into the turkey hunting, but this has got me intrigued now. So I know there's different cuts on the diaphragm calls. So I know I don't want to go too deep into like the engineering of even though I'm an engineer and I want to go into the engineering of the calls, but I just high level, there's batwing and there's all these different cuts. How does the cut affect the sound, and what do people need to know, or what do they need to be looking for when they're looking at the different cuts and styles of diaphragm calls?
To be 100% honest with you, I think people need to, especially beginners, try different style cuts and find what works best for you. I know I prefer a combination cut, and for a lot of the stuff that I do, I know I've got close friends that can't run what I like to run. They like running bat wings. I know got some other friends that like ghost cuts, which I can't do hardly anything on. And same with like a regular split V. Like 15 years ago, that used to be what I yelped on. Now I couldn't yelp on one for you if you gave me $100. It's just, I think it's all just how people present the air to those reeds. Everybody's mouth's different. It's just, I don't know the right answer to that question.
Okay.
Trying different stuff and what is most comfortable for you. I mean, it's
okay.
And coming from
ahead.
a complete beginner, you're running all of your turkey sounds and calls on the same mouth call, or do you switch them out throughout the hunt? Or I have no idea.
Yeah, I'll switch them out. I'll usually carry 4 or 5 with me on the hunt, and I've always got about 100 of them in the console of my truck, so they're always
right.
But no, I'll keep them around just because sometimes you'll cover a lot of ground and keep a mouth call in your mouth for a long time. It's going to get soggy, and that's a whole nother thing. Like when you're in the evenings, it's good to let them sit and dry out. But just for the simple fact of where they start getting soggy, I like to put a fresh one in where they've got a little more snap to them per se.
Okay.
After being in your mouth for 3 or 4 hours all morning, they start to get a little mushy.
But the same, like you use, you said a combination. You can make all of your calls on the same mouth call. You don't have to like switch it out for yelps versus fly down cackle. It's all one. Okay.
No, I'll do majority of that stuff on the same call. Yeah.
Okay.
Competition calling's a little bit different because you want everything to be precise. But in the turkey woods, they're not listening for mistakes like a human judge. So you can get a little carried away and a little sloppy per se.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's go back to the turkey woods. And so now we're going to say we don't know. We're going out in the morning. We don't know where the birds are. What is your tactic then? How are you locating birds?
Well, I will wait for it to start breaking daylight. And, if I'll wait for one to maybe sound off by himself, but if it gets to that point in the morning where, at daybreak where you should be hearing one and, there's nothing flying, no crows are flying over, no owls have sparked up yet or anything, I will use an owl hooter to try to get a turkey to gobble.
And this this is from the road, from the parking lot? Where are you starting out in the morning?
Depends on the property. Like if I know the property and have done my preseason scouting, I'll get to a high spot where I know I can hear good from.
Okay.
Or yeah, I mean there's times where we'll try it from the road, and if say like the owl hooter doesn't work, then I'll start trying some cackles and some yelping and cutting, like some aggressive calling. But I won't do that while I'm still expecting him to be on the limb.
Okay. All right. Do you think there's any, I don't know, this is kind of a little bit off topic, but sort of on topic. Do you think that the birds that are in pressured areas get wise to people calling from, like, I guess where I'm going with this is, in years past, we have driven around down in southeastern Ohio, public land area, and, we'll drive to the mouth of a big hollow or something and get out of the truck and call a little bit to see if we can get a bird to fire off. And it felt like, this time in particular that I'm referencing, we just drove around and would get out of the truck, make some calls, nothing, drive to the next spot, nothing. But then, say you drive up and around and you get out and you start walking out the ridge, now all of a sudden you can get birds to respond. Do you think they sort of get wise to, I know that's not a hen down there, that's the road down there, that's a dude, or
it's possible. I mean, I don't really know.
Okay.
They might be able to hear you better from up on that ridge top than they can down on the road. The car noise might have them shut up for a little bit. It could be anything there. I really don't know.
Okay. All right. That was a little bit of a detour, but
no, that's
anywho. So you're getting up to a high spot. You're going to try and listen for birds, and say you're not hearing anything. You said you're going to start, or you said that you would try some owl hoots and things to try and get a bird to sound off, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so then from there, you are using your owl hoots. You hear a bird. I guess depending on how far away it is, you're going to kind of move in on that bird. If it's like, what? How do you judge, like, that bird's too far, I need to get closer, or that bird is within range? That just comes from experience, I guess, from knowing, like, that bird will come, or
or I mean, if there's a lot of like if there's obstructions in between you and him, or obstacles, whatever, it might be a creek or a river, or a few ridges, whatever, and that you need to be somewhere where he can get to you easy when you start calling to him. Like say that there's a big creek or river, you're probably going to have a hard time calling him to you from where you initially get him to gobble from.
Okay.
Again, that's all situational, but I'll try to use any of the terrain or woods or anything that I can do, depending on how far away he seems. I do want to get pretty close to him before I get set up and start calling to him.
Okay, so having some familiarity with the terrain and your surroundings will help you, because you can kind of judge based on the volume or where you think that gobble is coming from. I can safely move closer.
Yep.
Because I'm assuming the closer you can get to him before you really start calling, the better your chances are, right?
Oh yeah, that's half the battle. I mean, you want to get somewhere where it's going to be, he's got the easiest travel route to you. That makes it a lot easier.
Okay. So you've located a bird now. You've moved into a comfortable range. At that point, is it, I guess, again, in a perfect world, is it more or less now we're back in the same situation where that we talked about earlier, where he's flown off the limb, he's coming your way, you're going to just kind of continue talking to him, but not overdoing it, and hopefully he comes within range?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to do the same thing as if I'm set up on him on the limb. I'm going to start soft calling him. And if he doesn't seem to be doing much, and again, I'm going to just take my time. But if he doesn't seem to be doing much, I'm going to get a little more aggressive with my calling and see what he does then. And, if he doesn't seem to be covering any ground, getting any closer, I'm probably going to make a new plan of attack and try to come at him from a different angle.
Okay. So you would, at that point, you would kind of back out of that spot and maybe circle around to a different area.
I'm not saying I wouldn't be in a hurry to do it, because a lot of times the lack of patience, I think, can mess a lot of people up.
Okay.
Because, sometimes, he might just be standing there just, eating acorns or whatever, just taking his time and gobbling every now and again. And, he just might not be in any hurry. And then about the time you get up and move, he's standing right where you were just sitting.
Right. Okay.
But patience is a big part of it.
Yeah. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I have a question along that same vein. I have a big problem with calling in turkeys to about 50, 60 yards, and then they hang up on me and just start strutting there. Any tips, strategies for that scenario?
Sometimes it could be just they're getting to a point where they think that they should see you and they want you to come to them. A lot of times when that happens, I'll just really tone the calling down, just go into my soft stuff, scratching in the leaves, clucks and purrs. And if that doesn't work, then I'll let him, again, like we were just talking on the other situation, I'll let him work his way off and get out of sight and try to get to where he was just where he came to where he felt comfortable strutting. If you can get to where you can shoot to where he was at, try to get as close as you can to that spot. Let him work his way off and then get up there and try to call him back up. Because, obviously he likes it there. He feels comfortable, and that'd be a perfect place to kill him.
All right.
So that sort of spawns another question. When you are picking a spot to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to call from here, what are you looking for, right? Because I'm sure there's things that make for a better spot than others, right? It's somebody that has your level of experience. In Jeff's scenario there, maybe it had more to do with where Jeff's set up to call. And if he would have originally said, 50 yards over there is really a better place for me to sit down and call, what are you looking for when you set up to call, or are you looking for something special?
Yeah, a lot of times, for one, I want to get to a spot where I can kind of, for the most part, conceal my silhouette, get my back up against a tree to where I'm not sticking out. I want to be in a spot where I know it's easy for him to get to, like there's not a bunch of thickets or anything making it hard for him to get there. You don't want to sit up in a big, honeysuckle thicket or something. You want to sit where you got some openings and stuff. And I want to have to every direction that I can shoot. I want to have good lanes. I want to be to where I believe I want to be aiming where I think he's going to come. And it sounds like he's coming from that direction, but I want to be able to shoot to the left and right of that if he turns and breaks. And I just want to have all my angles covered and good lanes.
Okay.
Which,
so
sometimes doesn't work out, but sometimes you got to make do with the best you can.
Sure. All right. So now let's get into I guess some of the what I'll call some of the challenges or trouble spots that people get into. So, Jeff just talked about one, right? The bird kind of hangs up. What do you do there? But what happens if you just can't seem to, like, the birds just aren't gobbling?
Man, you just got to keep swinging the bat and just cover ground.
Okay.
Try to find one that is. I mean, it seems like there's some days where the pressure isn't right and the turkeys don't seem to want to do anything. And then, there's days where it's pouring rain and the wind's blowing and you think they're not going to be doing anything and they're actually gobbling their heads off. It's just gotta keep persistent and cover ground and just keep calling and try to get one going. Or if you've done your preseason scouting and you know places that they're liking to strut or feed or spend time, whatever. I mean, just hump up and go sit down somewhere.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You do call sometimes with out having one on the line, one gobbling. Sometimes you do just go to a place where you think, they're likely to be and sit down and give it a shot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, especially depending on time. And if I'm in an area where I don't have permission on many places, I'm going to lock into a spot and just hang out.
Okay.
Yeah, because I have one property, very small property that I can hunt, but the area is thick with turkeys, but they
Where's
rarely
that
ever
at?
gobble. It's in Northeast Ohio.
You
It's
got
a very
an
small.
address?
Yeah,
GPS coordinates.
yeah. But it's thick with turkeys, but they do not gobble. I've only ever heard maybe a handful of gobbles in this area, but on trail cam, see turkey all the time. So I was just wondering if basically you do just sometimes set up and call to see what shows up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the other things that you mentioned there was in the rain. So will you hunt turkeys? Is it worth your time, I guess, to go out and hunt in the rain, or does it maybe it depends on how hard it's raining or what maybe how windy, or what are your thoughts on?
As long as it's not, monsoon and I don't have to be at work, I'm going hunting.
Okay.
But I mean, there'll be times when you go out in the morning and it'll start off, a nice morning, and then it'll turn into a nasty day, and they'll still do it. I was on a hunt one time up in Ontario, Canada, and I swear on my daughter's life, it was raining and blowing so hard I thought we were going to get carried away in a tornado, and I've got other witnesses to this. We were calling and had decoys set up, and there were turkeys coming. They were 30 yards away from the decoys, strutting and gobbling, and you couldn't even hear them. It
really?
was blowing. So, yes, it was crazy.
Wow. All right. Well, that's good to know.
It was ridiculous. And I'd say we have the footage of it, but we had the camera buried under like 3 coats, keeping it dry.
Yeah.
But
well,
yeah,
that just goes to the old adage, you ain't going to kill him from the couch, so you got to get out there, man. Get after him. Okay. All right, so I guess let's talk. What are some of your other, I guess, tips or tricks that you would give sort of beginner / intermediate turkey hunters? Do you have any tips or things that you try to guide people on in that kind of situation?
I tell you, one of the coolest things about turkey hunting that I like is I love it about it. It doesn't matter. I mean, the more experience you have, the better off you're going to be, obviously. But it doesn't matter how many times you go. There's still so much to be learned. Every hunt, whether you kill one, you miss one, you screw up, it's a learning experience. And the coolest bit of advice that I ever got when I just started turkey hunting back in the mid to late 90s, And I was talking to an old call maker from Ohio, and I said, man, is there any tips you could give me? And he said, man, I'll give you the best one I got. And I said, what's that? And he's like, well, he said, I've made every mistake there is to make except for one. And I said, man, what's that? He goes, I don't know yet. And I was like, man, that's pretty cool. Like, I mean, and I that was 20 some years ago, and I've never forgot it. And it still stands true. Just about every time you get out of the truck, it's like, I never thought of them doing that. Or
yeah. One thing, I'll say this is, I've shot one turkey in my life. I've hunted a couple seasons, got one turkey, and just turkey hunting is different than deer hunting in that it just, for me at least, it's a bit more relaxed or something. Like that bird didn't work out. It's like, yeah, we'll go find another one, sort of thing, and
yeah,
it's just, it's springtime, right? It's at the very least, right, you can just hang out there on the hillside and soak up the sunshine, and it's just
it's something you can enjoy with your buddies and family members, to where you're not locked into a tree stand sitting there all day by yourself,
right.
And it's a lot more enjoyable, especially when you're calling to a gobbler and he's responding, and you're getting that excitement of having that conversation and knowing that you're in the game.
Right.
It's really cool. I think I love deer hunting just as much, but turkey hunting's hard to. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, last season I shot my first turkey, and I'm this year, like, I can't wait for turkey season. I'm hooked bad. So last year, my dad was calling for me, and I was shooting. So we're down in southeast Ohio near Wayne National Forest, and we hear a bird. We're out in the morning, we hear a bird. We're like, it's kind of a ways off. We're gonna walk up this way until we get a little closer, and we're gonna set up. So we walk down there. Dad's he's gonna kind of be behind me a little bit. He says, go over there and set up, and once you get set up, I'll start calling. So I go over there and set up, and I'm very much a newbie at this, and so I'm rushing, right? Oh my gosh, I gotta get over here and sit down. And so I pick the first tree that I think this looks good, and as soon as I sit down, like, now I'm on the ground, and I'm like, oh geez, I can't see, but I'm so nervous, right? This bird's coming. Oh my gosh, I'm like freaking out. So I sit down, Dad starts calling, and the bird's coming, right? I can hear him. He's gobbling. Gobbles are getting louder. He gets to where I can hear that drumming sound that they make. I'm like, his bird is close. He is close.
The in the leaves?
Like the
Oh yeah, I know the drumming, but then you can start to hear him walking too.
Yeah.
And then your heart's about to pump out of your chest.
Yes, but I can't see the bird yet, right? And so I'm freaking out. My heart's just hammering, and I can hear him. So I've got a little rise on my right, and I can hear him over there. But I'm like, oh man, I can't move. Like, he's right there, and I turn my head to the right, and he comes up, and his head pops up. And we just look at each other for a second, and he's gone, and it was like, oh my gosh, that was the coolest thing ever.
Yep.
And Dad, after the fact, Dad's like, why'd you sit down there? I was like, I don't know, I was freaking out. The bird was coming, I had to sit down,
Yep.
But later in the day, we did end up making it happen. But yeah, it was. So since then, I'm pumped up for this season, to say the least.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for it. I think it started in South Florida today, so there's buddies of mine already hunting, and it's killing me.
Yeah, I bet. So you hunt, I'm assuming, all over the country then for turkeys?
Yeah, I've been a lot of places. Yep.
Any favorites? Any places that you like better than others, or?
Man, I really enjoy hunting the mountains down in southeastern Kentucky.
Okay.
I really enjoy hunting western Oklahoma. It's just completely different. Kansas and Nebraska are cool. Usually a lot of birds, and Wisconsin's become one of my favorite places here the past few years. It's pretty awesome up there. But nothing beats hunting at home. Traveling a lot, it's nice to be home, sleeping in your own bed and getting up and going hunting and coming home.
Yeah, I bet. So do you have plans to hunt some other states this year, or are you going to hunt Ohio primarily, or what are your plans for this season?
I'll be hunting western Oklahoma, and then Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is another one of my favorites too. They're all my favorite. Ohio, PA, Wyoming, and Wisconsin towards the end of the spring.
Okay. All right. So I guess some other Jeff, do you guys have any other before I continue on hogging Josh's time? Do you guys have questions you have for Josh?
I have a good question here. Do you change your strategy or notice that it's good to change your strategy throughout the season in Ohio? Do you notice a difference in turkey behavior that, you should do this over that?
Yeah, especially like hunting the same properties. Like one of the areas that I hunt a lot in Ohio, we've got 4 or 5 like main farms that have decent amount of turkeys on them, and throughout the season, it's like we'll park the truck and we'll go at them the same way every time, and I think they start to feel that pressure, and then usually, about halfway through the second week into the third week, we'll start coming in from the other side and having success that way. I think that they do get used to that pressure, and I mean they'll end up not roosting on those sides, especially after you shoot 1 or 2 of them, and I think they get used to that, and it never hurts to change your strategy.
Okay. So I guess some other questions I had. One of the things that we talked about through text message as we were setting this up is maybe talking about what to do with call shy birds. So could you kind of talk to us? Is it, do they get call shy as the season, they've been called to and they're kind of getting wise to that? Is that what makes a bird kind of call shy, and then how do you handle that?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, like we were talking earlier, it has to do with, being called to a lot, obviously, but, them seeing their buddies be shot and the constant pressure, they're not gobbling as hard as what they would. And, and towards the end of the season, they're not, when they're starting to slow it down. And that's hitting those spots where that they're liking to hang out and feeding. And I mean, a lot of that we'll cover from scouting from the road, with binoculars if possible, if we can see them in fields, or covering ground and finding those areas where you can see the scratchings in the leaves where they're doing a lot of feeding.
Okay.
But stuff like that, and just getting in areas if you can find where they're hanging out, and just setting up and playing the waiting game sometimes, which it's not the funnest way to turkey hunt, but I mean, it can be a method of being successful.
Okay. So let's talk about decoy strategies, right? So you said you're typically carrying decoys with you. What does your decoy setup look like? Are you carrying just a hen decoy or a couple? What is your typical go-to when it comes to decoys?
More times than not, what I'm packing is like one of our Avian-X breeder hen. It's like an upright breeder where her neck's like kind of halfway up. She's just like in a relaxed position with our Avian-X quarter strut Jake, or we've also got a new Jake decoy that came out this year, the HDR. It's a heavy duty realism. And it's got a very realistic look to it. It's got switch out heads. One's kind of a more relaxed, one's a little bit more aggressive. But the quarter strut Jake decoy, our initial Jake decoy from years ago, just putting that out there, it's not an aggressive pose that it's in. It's something that, man, it just seems like more times than not, those gobblers see that Jake decoy, they got to come investigate it, if not beat it up if you let them. I'd love to know how many times I've seen it happen, but it's such an effective decoy.
Okay.
And decoys are great too for beginner turkey hunters, taking kids out. It's just something else to, that gobbler has to. All his focus is on those decoys. So if you got a kid or someone who's can't sit completely still, it takes a lot of that focus off the hunter.
That's what Jacob needs. Jacob can't sit still.
Got that right.
Give him some video games and a candy bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There
that's
you
my
go.
problem. I move around too much.
All right. Well, we're gonna get Jake a bird this year. I'm bound and determined, man.
I hope. You guys had a hot year last year, and I had to
Yeah.
work. So
Yeah. We did good last year. Okay, so we went over. We just covered the decoy strategy. We've gone through a handful of different calling scenarios. I guess this just popped into my head. So at what point, when you're calling to a bird, at what point, like the bird gets hung up, right? That's where I'm going. Like the bird gets hung up. At what point do you say, he's just not coming, I need to come up with a new game plan? Is it a time thing, or is it based on terrain? You say, you know what, he's probably hung up on that ravine or something. I need to change my tactic. Or what are your thoughts there when a bird seems like they're hung up too far, you can't see them?
Jason, something we haven't even touched on yet, which is probably one of the biggest hangups, is hens. And a lot of times they're, that gobbler might have the easiest path to get to you, and he's hanging out there just gobbling, and he's just staying in the same spot. And a lot of times, he's got a hen with him and he's not leaving. Something that I've noticed over the years, when you start to kind of push the issue with those turkeys and getting aggressive with them and maybe moving a little bit closer to them, and they'll seem to like get a little bit farther away from you each time they're gobbling.
Mm-hmm.
That will 9 times out of 10 initially tell me that, hey, he's with a hen and she doesn't want anything to do with me. She's getting him out of here. And a lot of times when that starts happening, that's when I'll try to make a plan to try to get around them, or if I have an idea where maybe they're going, I'd like to get there before they do. Or that when they get with hens, I mean, that's the toughest thing in turkey hunting.
Okay. So at that point, say you're pretty sure that Tom's with a hen, and you're going to try and circle around him. Are you just kind of sitting tight, or are you doing any calling at that point?
No, if I'm moving on him, I'm not going to call to him until I get to where I feel like I need to be, where I can get him and that hen to me. And if I can, if I can get her fired up to where she'll want to come investigate me and drag him along with her, that's when I'll get aggressive with my calling. I've had a lot of success early season doing that. But it's tough, man. End up gobblers they're really tough.
Okay.
I guess how much pressure or disturbance will a turkey take? like you say, you're moving around. Like, how far out and around do you have to go without him? Like, at what point will he just get fed up with you? You know what I mean? Like, how quick are you moving? How quiet do you have to be? Like, I am very much a rookie turkey hunter, so I'm talking from a rookie point of view.
If I'm moving,
like, compared to deer, like, you can't just get up and move with deer.
Right. I mean, as long as if that gobbler can't see you, I'm going to move and keep out of his sight, and I'm going to be as quiet as possible. But I'm probably going to take myself plenty far away from him to where I can move fairly quick and make a little bit of noise, to where I'm not going to give myself up. But as I start getting closer to where I feel like I can get to him, I'm definitely going to slow it down and really be quiet and pay attention to what I'm doing.
Okay.
Okay. So we're coming up. I want to be respectful of your time. We're coming up on an hour here.
Fine.
Is I guess anything else that we're not even thinking to ask you? There's probably so much in your head that, like, this is just a blip on the radar of all your turkey knowledge. But what else would you have for us, or what else should we be asking you?
I don't know. I guess maybe just something like something I would say that helps me a lot that I always have with me in my turkey vest is binoculars. Like, I can't stand hunting without my binoculars.
Okay.
Because there's times where you could be, one of your spots you're hunting, glass in the field, or if you're just looking out across the field, you might not see anything, but then you pull your binoculars up, and you might be able to pick up a turkey head or the tips of a tail fan. Or even if you're slipping through the woods and you can glass through the woods and maybe see something. I don't go anywhere without my binoculars. I feel naked without them.
Okay. Is there anything else that you carry in your vest that people might be surprised to know that you keep in your vest?
Man, I don't know.
Okay.
I like to keep my my hunting license, pen, all the stuff for checking my turkey. I like to keep it in Ziploc bag, keep it dry. Obviously.
Definitely. No other secret tools or tricks that.
Friction calls, box call, obviously pot and peg style calls, owl hooter. That's stuff that I've always got with me.
Okay.
Shells, toilet paper.
That's important.
Yeah. I always carry bottles of water, and there are specific brands of water. I know this is going to sound stupid and maybe a little bit crazy, but like there's the bottles of water that have like the real cheap plastic, like they're like crunchy.
Yeah.
And then there's like the I don't know if it's Aquafina or whatever. It's kind of like a bottle, like a Pepsi or Mountain Dew comes in the plastic bottle.
Yep.
That's like a harder plastic. That's the kind of water bottles that I like to carry in my vest, because those other ones are complete noisemakers all the time.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that just drives me nuts. Face mask and gloves. I always carry an extra face mask and an extra pair of gloves, because it never fails. Whoever I'm hunting with forgets something. And just like to keep all that covered.
Okay.
But I've been guilty of it in the past myself too. So
do you find you have? I mean, you probably have a lot of success no matter how you hunt. But hunting with like a partner, having like them sit back maybe 20 yards and call would help to not, like having a shooter and a caller. Does that tend to work better, or hunting by yourself? Do you have more luck?
Both of them are good. I've got a few buddies that I hunt with every year that, Yeah, we will use that strategy where one of us will maybe like walk off and try to drag one in or float call, whatever they call it. Yeah, I've got a few guys that I hunt with, and we've used that strategy numerous times and had success. For the most part, though, we're sitting side by side, a few feet apart or whatever it may be.
Okay. I just had a question I wanted to ask you, and now I blanked on it. I hate when that happens.
I got another question.
Okay.
Is there any truth or strat? Like I've heard that like a box call cuts through the wind the best. Is that? I mean, what calls do you use? Like if it's windy, do you just primarily still use diaphragm calls, or do your friction calls tend to cut through the noise a little better, like the wind?
Yeah, I've noticed that like a box call or a friction call definitely produces a lot more. I don't know what the word is. Higher pitch, frequency. It's definitely louder. It has a lot more resonance than the sound of a mouth call trying to cut it through the wind. Yes, they are a lot better for getting turkeys to gobble in the wind.
Okay. I remembered my question. So you mentioned that you like to carry shotgun shells in your vest. What do you have a preferred shot size for turkeys?
I like 5 or 6s. It seems like in the past few years I've been shooting 6s more than anything.
Okay.
And it's just, I guess it's because that's what I had, and they, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with them. So.
And that's like standard lead or copper plated lead pellets, or you, because we've been seeing some of the what is it, the tungsten?
Yeah, the new TSS.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been shooting the Browning BXD ammo the past couple years, and I really like it. And Browning actually is coming out with TSS this year that I'll probably be getting to try out here within the next few weeks. So.
Okay. Okay. All right. So with your wealth of turkey hunting experiences and stuff, do you have a particular turkey hunt or a turkey hunting experience that sticks out to you? Some kind of like what's your favorite turkey hunting story or something memorable with turkey hunting that you'd like to share?
Oh man, they're all so good. They're all my favorites, but the ones that stick out to me, I've been doing this, like I said, this will be my 25th season, and it was 2 springs ago. Called in a gobbler for my dad, and he killed it. It was his first longbeard, and that was pretty special. I mean,
Cool.
He's known how much like I care about this stuff for a long time, and he's a hard worker and was always busy to turkey hunt. But yeah, him killing his first longbeard was pretty awesome. And then this last spring we got him on another one opening morning in Pennsylvania, and shoot it, probably wasn't 5 minutes in the daylight, he killed that one. And just seeing how excited he was, I feel like the whole process was a little bit reversed. When you're a parent and seeing your kid do good, it's pretty awesome. But I guess I could kind of understand that feeling. Pretty tickled. It was a pretty neat moment. Couple of them. So, and
that's cool.
That's all he's talking about now is he can't wait for this spring. So
he's got the bug now.
Yeah, oh yeah. We don't let him call though.
I wouldn't call if I hunted with you either.
Oh, shoot.
I just let the maestro, man. Just do your thing, man. That's what I'd say. Josh, do your thing.
Yep.
That's all good.
No,
all
it's
right.
It's a lot of fun. Like I said earlier, I mean, it's not like deer hunting. I mean, you can get out there and you can go hunting with 3 or 4 of your buddies, and you can make some noise here and there. But when you get a gobbler fired up, I mean, it's, when to be quiet, and it's fun.
Yeah. All right. Jake, Jeff, anything else you want to ask Josh, before we let him go?
I guess I have. Oh,
Go ahead,
Jeff, go
Jake.
ahead. Okay, I'll go.
No, Jake, go ahead.
It's probably a ridiculous question, but I'm just curious. Again, completely coming from a rookie turkey hunter. Is there any tip or trick or way to get? I've never even shot a gobbler, but like a bigger, like, is there a different way you call to try and get a bigger gobbler, a more mature gobbler? Do they respond differently? I mean, I know Jake versus Tom, but like, are there guys who target only, 12-inch or longer beard? You know what I mean? Like, is there a way to get those turkeys to respond to you versus, or is that just completely luck of the draw?
Well, I think when you're that 12-inch beard or whatever, that's luck. That's the bonus of it. I mean, it's hard to measure them until you get them on the ground. But no, you want to call to them all this is you want to sound as much like a hen as you possibly can, and they're all gonna, for the most part, respond.
Okay, so there's not with comparing it to deer hunting, you can't like with deer hunting you can make more like dominant buck sounds to get more dominant bucks to kind of come in and run them off. Like you can't. That doesn't relate to turkey hunting.
Not really. I mean, there's some situations where you can, do gobbler yelps and try to gobble at them and try to challenge those gobblers per se.
Right.
Then using the particular the regular hen talk.
And I think for me, I'll add something on that. I think that's one of the beauties of turkey hunting, if you will, is that like it's either a Jake or a Tom, and if it's a like you said, the big long beard is kind of a bonus, but it's a Tom's a Tom in some sense, right? I mean, it's some of the longest spurred gobblers that I've shot over the years have had some of the nastiest little stringy beards, but like I've always said, if it's a long beard, I'm going to shoot it. I don't care how old he is. Right.
Mature gobbler's a mature gobbler, and it's
and
a bonus.
Right. Yeah. So, all right, Jeff, you had some questions too. Jake, were you done first before I?
I'm good. Right. Yep. Thank you.
I just had one last sort of fun question. Basically, what's the strangest or like funniest thing you've ever heard a turkey shock gobble to?
Oh boy. Oh. Some of my buddies calling. No, I'm just kidding. You put me on the spot here. I'd have to think. I've heard
or just name off a few.
Oh, geez.
Well, I guess while you're thinking, right, shock gobble is just like, why do they shock gobble? They're just fired up in the spring, and any kind of loud noise will trigger a shock gobble, or do you know the reasoning behind that?
I'm no biologist. I just like to turkey hunt, and my kind of theory on it is like it's kind of more of a nervous reaction. Like, when someone walks up behind you and pinches you on the back of your arm and you jump and, it scares the crap out of you. It hurts.
Yep.
Like I kind of think when they hear that crow fly over and or, a goose flying over and honking, and it's just like they initially just bam, they gobble to it. Like it just catches their attention.
Right.
That's my thoughts on it, but I'm not the expert on that. I
okay. So that I guess brings up another question. You mentioned crows. Do you ever have issues with crows? Because crows will kind of pester turkeys, right? I mean, do you ever have issues like when you're calling and all of a sudden you got a bunch of crows around you? Does that hurt your hunt, or does that affect things at all?
I don't think so. And something that I've noticed over the years too, it seems like, and we'll have decoys set up in fields on some hunts, whatever, and it seems like the crows will hang around, and then you might see them over like another spot on the other end of a field or something, and they're flying around, and it's like, man, what's got their attention over there? And then next thing you know, here comes turkeys from that direction. Sometimes I think they will like kind of hang around the turkeys, but I mean, that's just another, I don't know, theory, I guess, that I kind of have that I've kind of noticed. But,
sure.
That's another great call to have in your vest is a crow call as far as locating them midday. Crows and like pileated woodpecker.
Okay.
I've hunted for 20 plus years now with a pileated woodpecker call that when I don't want to try to locate a gobbler using calls, I could, due to the fact that I don't want to give up my location. I don't want to let him know where I'm at. I want to use a crow call or a woodpecker call to make him gobble, and then I can move and adjust from hearing him and get closer to where he's at just by getting him to gobble at that woodpecker call.
Okay.
And then, set up on him and then switch over to my turkey calls.
Okay. All right. Well,
I got another question I just thought of.
Go for it.
How much, or how do you, I guess, do you ever, or how often do you have issues with coyotes when you're turkey hunting, like coming into your calls?
It's, we've had them come in and actually hit the decoys a handful of times. I'd say I've probably seen it 5 or 6 times where they've been like right up in the decoys. I think a lot of times they probably get close before and coming in from different directions and wind you before, well, you would never even see them,
Right.
Okay.
I know coyotes have been kind of like a hot button issue in Ohio. Everyone's with turkey season coming around. They're hating on their coyotes, so that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, they're getting really thick in the areas where I hunt.
Yeah, that seems to be the general consensus. People are seeing them more and more, and the population is definitely increasing.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Josh, any closing thoughts before we let you go?
No, I appreciate you guys having me on, and I hope you have a safe and successful spring. And if there's anything else you guys need from me, let me know.
Awesome.
Maybe we can get up together and go chase them one day.
There we go. I like the sounds of that. Well, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to talk with us, and I think we covered a ton of stuff in here. I think this is really going to be helpful for people. And I also want to give you an opportunity. Where do people find you and your stuff? Right, you work for Zink Calls and Avian-X. How do people find you?
www.zinkcalls.com, avian-x.com, and our show Avian-X TV can be watched for free on the Mossy Oak Go app. It's a new app that just started up not too long ago. It's completely free, and they just started downloading some of our shows. So if you got time, go check us out.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, I really appreciate you taking the time, and
thank you guys.
Wish you the best of luck this season.
You too.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys.
And there you have it. I want to thank Josh for coming on and taking time out of his schedule to talk to us. We really enjoyed talking to him, learned a lot. Hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully there's some takeaways out of that episode that you can use in the woods this spring. I want to wish everybody good luck in the turkey woods. And if you would, or if you're in the market for turkey decoys, turkey calls, or goose or duck calls or decoys, check out Zink Calls at zinkcalls.com and Avian-X Decoys at avian-x.com. And I just want to continue to thank everybody for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, share it on your social pages. That really helps spread the word. Check out our Eat Local shirts. There'll be a link to that in the description. And as always, thanks for listening.